There we go. I think we are live. Okay, good evening, everyone. I hereby call the Monday, November 13th, 2023 Cumberland Town Council meeting to order. Before we get into the agenda this evening, just a few quick housekeeping things. We did have an executive session meeting this evening at 5 o'clock regarding some real property here in the town. We also then followed that with a workshop with the Lands and Conservation Commission regarding some grassland nesting bird conservation, which will be talked about later as an agenda item this evening. So now that we are in the meeting, the first item of business is the approval of the minutes. Those are the minutes from our October 23rd, 2023 meeting.
I move to adopt.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the manager's report. Mr. Manager.
I will defer to you, Mr. Chair, and we'll have our legislators, representatives speak before us tonight. So.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We are very fortunate to have Representative Steve Moriarty and Senator Teresa Peirce here this evening to give us a legislative update. So I will pass it on to you fine folks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening to the council. I'm Steve Moriarty from 12 Oak Street, currently serving as your state representative. And you have before you some copies of the slides that will be shown tonight. We're here to give a brief summary of several topics from the first regular and first special session of the 130th First Legislature, which ended in early July. So we'll be going through that. Teresa and I have divided up the topics as between ourselves, and she gets to go first. So I'll turn it over to my good friend and colleague from Falmouth, Senator Peirce.
Thank you so much, Representative Moriarty. Again, I'm Teresa Peirce. I represent 5.5 towns in Cumberland County, Senate District 25. One of them is Cumberland, so I'm delighted to be here tonight. We have a couple, do I advance these slides? That's what I don't know.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Where do I do that?
With the mouse. Should click.
There we go.
There we go.
So the first is sort of Cumberland by the numbers, and this has to do with the amount of money that you receive for the 55% share of education that the state provides. You receive 14 million and change. That was an increase about 1.6, 1.7 million over the year before. And the other has to do with revenue sharing, where we collect all this revenues for sales from the state, put them in a pool, and then divide them back out into communities. And Cumberland received 1.685 in municipal revenue sharing. That's a slight decrease from the year before. You may remember that it's supposed to be at 5%. It dropped all the way almost to 0, and we've been itching it back up to 5%, and now we're at 5%. So it'll be a little more steady number and have some fluctuation based on, again, the sales tax that we bring in across the state. So that's why you see a little bit lower number there. We invested a lot of time and energy and treasure in our workforce and our families. We created the first statewide paid family leave and medical leave program that's start up in 2025, or people will start contributing in 2025, and the whole program will be up and running in 2026. We did a lot for child care, increased the payments and stipends to people who provide child care. That was a big priority for all of the legislature. We supported the Maine Healthcare Provider Loan Repayment System. That's where if people are in, they get loans repayment for the schoolwork that they did. It helps people go into that as a career, I guess. And then we did critical funding to our EMS services all across the state, which was exciting. We also did a lot of work on housing. I'm the Senate Chair of the Housing Committee. This is a special committee created by the legislature this year to address the, I think we can all share that is a crisis. We established the first Housing First program. This is a apartment-style buildings that are built by nonprofits like Avesta. And then we overlaid 24/7 services to these projects in the future, going future, because we know that people who are chronically homeless, is about 500 to 700 people across our state. If we can get them into housing and then provide support services, they'll stay in housing. And so a lot of people that unfortunately are in encampments and such would be qualifying for these Housing First programs. These will be all over the state, and look forward to that getting up and online. We invested $70 million in two programs. One is LIHTC, which is a federal program for those earning under 30% AMI, and another $35 million into the rural rental program, which is our version without federal input for it. So we got to design it ourselves, and LIHTC builds bigger projects of 55 to 60 units per unit. You have actually possibly one going in on Route 1. But the rural projects are for smaller things, like 4 to 10 units or something, and it might happen in a smaller community around the state. Huge investment. The state has invested over close to $300 million in the last 5 years in a lot of these programs to build housing, so we're doing a lot of work, but there's still a lot to do. Did a lot of money for emergency housing and shelter, $26 million. We've helped with a lot of things around the state to keep people in shelters and safe during difficult times. We did $15 million in low energy assistance and $12 million in emergency rental relief, and we started our first student homelessness bill. This actually is for kids who are in school whose family may be on the edge of becoming homeless, and it's starting a program through McKinney-Vento for families to come and say, hey, we just need a little bit of something to keep us housed right now. It's not a lot of money, but it really makes a difference if you can keep people housed so they don't become unhoused. Worked on that. We did some heating and housing relief to over 850,000 Mainers of eligibility, and then we extended our TIF districts. If you have a maturing TIF, and your TIF was going to mature, you can now extend your TIF as long as you invest, I think it's 51% in housing or in transportation, so then the corridors there. So you get the benefit of your TIF going forward, which a lot of communities, especially in my district, have, but also supports the building of more affordable housing across the state. So I'm really excited about that. Oop, let's see. And are you doing? Yep. I'll turn it over to Steve. We're a little like, you know, one-man show here, like back and forth.
All right, next up is supporting schools and educators. And as was mentioned earlier, we finally did achieve a couple years ago the 5% target for municipal revenue sharing. We also at that time achieved finally the 55% target for state support for school funding, and that was maintained this year with no income tax increase and no sales tax increase. So that's a very, very good thing, and you saw on the first slide what that means for the town this year, and it's all good news, obviously. The free school meal program for all students in public school was continued, and that's made a good deal of difference in many, many districts across the state, perhaps more so in some of the rural and isolated areas than here in our part, but in any event, it's a very, very successful program. We also extended the no tuition program for attendance at community colleges. And as you've probably seen in the paper, attendance and enrollment in the community college system has really grown substantially. Nothing but good news in that picture. And whether people use it as all the education they want or as a springboard to something else, it's working out very, very well. And I think we're all quite proud of having done that. Legislation was passed this past spring to boost our teacher, the number of available teachers, and to fight the shortage by establishing an alternative pathway to the profession. And more specifically, the funding that was passed supports teacher mentorship and training programs through the UMaine system. And that should, once it gets underway, help to bring more people into the profession and make it more easy for them to attain certification as teachers. And finally, there's the matter of teacher salaries, which are not at an impressive starting level, and that is part of the problem. But I understand we did approve an increase in funding. As I understand it, that increase now is with the Appropriation Committee, waiting for further action from them once we reconvene in January. So the legislative work on that topic has been done. The real work in terms of finding the dollars and parsing out the dollars and so forth remains to be done. But I am quite hopeful that we get a good result once the Appropriations Committee is finished. So we're back to Senator Peirce.
So we did quite a little bit of work on the environment and things that might have an effect. We try to keep these kind of focused to municipality things. I mean, we did tons of other things around all this stuff. But we did a lot of, some more money toward PFAS mitigation. Everybody knows that that's an up-and-coming issue that's gonna have ongoing expenses. And so we're doing some more testing and working to try to understand that better and the impact that it has. Energy planning for resiliency around climate change. We all know that all communities are being affected about that, either through storm or water or whatever it might be. And so we're trying to get ahead of the curve by helping communities understand how to deal with that in a number of different ways. And then, of course, we did that around energy and around resilience for climate change. And then drinking water and wastewater systems, we invested quite a bit of money into as well. We, like many states, have old pipes, and we need to keep moving forward on some of those activities. So more to come on a lot of those, but I think they're important things for this community to know about. So and we're tag teaming again.
All right, next up is tax relief. I know that a lot of folks here in town and in fact statewide were disappointed when the stabilization program enacted last year was in fact terminated. As it turned out, not a lot of thought and effort went into the adoption of that particular bill, and it soon became apparent that it was unsustainably expensive, and it was not the way to go. So property tax stabilization was abolished barely before it got off the ground. Now, in its place, two new programs were created. The first is the Property Tax Fairness Credit, and that is available to those whose primary residence is in Maine, who have paid taxes in Maine, who have filed a tax return here in Maine, and also to those who are 65 years of age or older. And if all of those criteria are met, the tax credit that is available is now increased from, I think, a previous figure of $1,500 to $2,000. So that's good news for those who will qualify for this particular program. Also, we adopted a property tax deferral program similarly available to those 65 years of age or older, and also those who are permanently disabled for one reason or another. The qualifiers are that your combined income must be less than $80,000, and your combined liquid assets must be less than $150,000. So it's clearly targeted to that end of the economic spectrum of earners. What happens is that if a town or a city defers taxes, the state pays the amount to the towns and cities so that they don't suffer the loss. Then, upon sale, death, transfer of the property, the owner, if it's a sale, or the estate, if it involves a death, is responsible for reimbursing the state in full plus interest. So that in the long run, the state loses no money and the taxpayers lose no money in the maintenance of this program. It's again something that should make a big difference to those in that upper age bracket and in that income bracket. Let's see. I am not getting much.
Can you right-click on it, Steve?
Right-clicking.
Right, or, let me see how I can do it from here. There you go. Next one.
Okay, that's it. Now, switching from property tax to income tax, what used to be known as the child care credit, or tax credit, was replaced with what's known as a dependent exemption credit. It's in the amount of $300, will begin in fiscal year 2025. Now, this is intended to expand the prior child care credit to include persons who are in fact your children, but also a foster child or an adult who, for whatever reason, perhaps an elderly parent, becomes your dependent. And that credit will be available to you under those circumstances. So it's an expansion of what existed previously and should be welcomed by those who will qualify. Also, and concluding this particular point, as far as income tax is concerned, for those who are retired, the income tax pension deduction previously was $30,000 and now has been increased to $35,000. Good news for those who are retired and will benefit from that change in the deduction. And the deduction is scheduled to increase incrementally over the years until it reaches the equivalent of the maximum Social Security benefit. And we don't know really, or at least I don't know when that might happen, but the good news is it's going to be a progressively increasing amount from the $35,000 that's now in effect. So I think that is the final slide. The next one should say thank you, but it may not be necessary to project that after all.
Yeah, well,
So thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Do we have any, I think we already do have some questions, please. Counselor Filson.
Hello, thank you both so much for being here tonight. So I had one question. I think, as you both know, we are sort of busting at the seams with our elementary school, and I was curious as we're looking to hear about enrollment projections, if there has been kind of any rumblings about universal pre-K, and whether or not that's something that is on anyone's agenda, and if it should be something we might want to plan for.
So I served on the Education Committee for 2 terms when I was in the House, and then I'm back on that as a second right now. Back when Falmouth built its elementary school, which I was part of that committee in 2008, there was talk of mandating pre-K. Hasn't happened yet, but we've invested quite a bit of resources into it for communities that want to pursue it at their own speed for renovation of buildings or finding space for that. It's a very different model than just an elementary school, the pre-K, because of the age of the kids. So I haven't seen anything about mandating it. I think that we've done a good job across the state of encouraging and promoting it in a way that people have taken real advantage of it. Falmouth just started it after many, many years of not doing it. So I think if you're interested in it, it's something you can explore with the availability of grants that might come to you to think. I don't know if you have that. I don't think you have full pre-K here, do you? Can't remember. No, right. It's hard to remember all the districts about which has what, so. We don't have a bill in front of education that's mandating it. I think we've found that the carrot is a lot better way to get people to come on board. I will say that the performance and the benefit to children that start earlier just pays itself off in spades as you move forward through their education. But it's just a personal decision for each community at this point, with resources behind it should you decide to move in that direction. We did build our elementary school to have full pre-K at the time, and now that they've taken, Falmouth did, and now that they're taking it on, there's room for it, which is nice, so.
Counselor
One of the things the state did probably a couple years ago when you were just, may have been more than a couple years ago, because
Time
I lose
flies.
track of time, but they mandated towns take over CDS, so early intervention for the 3 to 5-year-olds, right? And that's how some of the pre-K programs are getting their funding in creative ways. So you've heard Scott Poulin and or Jeff Porter say that pre-K has actually been kind of a moneymaker for us. And part of it is because of the increased support from the state for children identified as needing early intervention. So that's been super supportive.
And CDS still isn't completely under the purview of all individual districts. It's sort of how your town
I did have
is.
a question about education, or not a question, just something I wanted to point out, because if I were sitting in the town going, yay, the state's gonna pay 55% of our school budget, they don't. They pay 55% of essential programs and services, and Cumberland and North Yarmouth spend quite a bit more than essential programs and services, as do many schools in the state.
Most
You
do.
decide you want a program that's not an essential program, then you pay for it. So I would love to see 55% of the whole bill, but
Well, as we like to say, local control, it's about what each community wants to take in
Yeah.
and above that, which you're exactly right about, so.
And
many
one other
districts do.
question about the increase in the in the deductible, or in the allowable income for salaries increasing from 30 to 35. Does that include teachers? Because originally it covered state employees, but not teachers. Teachers were at like, just 2 years ago, we're at 15,000. That's all they could, allowable income
That was
before they-
something we worked very hard on in the last legislature, went from 15 to the 25, and in this one, we went from 30 to 35, trying
And
to
it
create a
includes
balance. And
teachers.
it includes any
Which is
retiree in the
fabulous, yeah,
entire
okay.
state. So it's not just for the public employees, it's for any retiree in the state.
So
And
that's a nice 20,000 bump for
that
retired
is
teachers.
I think is a real game changer for helping
Yep,
people think
for-
about
Yeah, okay,
their retirement savings, yeah. So
All
proud, really proud of that work.
thank you.
Did you have any questions?
Were you going to ask a question about the split?
Yeah, so I guess I can jump right in. Senator Peirce, you brought up that really interesting change in TIF for affordable housing, kind of being able to extend an aging TIF zone. If you can assure that, I think you said 51% of the TIF revenues needed to be used towards,
Yeah, toward affordable housing or transportation.
Okay.
So
I'm just wondering, I didn't know, maybe I'd heard that it might have been a higher number than that.
I
So
think, now that I say that, I apologize. Representative Kuhn from Falmouth ran that whole bill, and it might be actually closer to 80, but I'll get the right number for you guys. I
Yeah, that's-
apologize for misusing
No,
numbers.
that's okay.
A lot of numbers on these slides tonight, I apologize. so.
Totally get it. And then my other question, actually for Representative Moriarty, would be, on that deferral, the tax deferral bill that you talked about on slide 7, the property tax deferral program, where it was for folks with income less than 80K and assets of less than 150K. I just want to make sure I'm clarifying. That's a full deferral program still under statute, right? Where a taxpayer is not paying, stabilizing their taxes at a particular amount, and then whatever the increment is kind of held on in
Yeah,
advance.
that's my understanding,
That it's still a full deferral as opposed to a
Exactly.
partial.
Yep.
Okay,
yes.
okay. Please.
Thank you both for coming tonight. Quick question regarding the continuing school meals for all Maine public schools. Is there an expiration date on that as it stands now?
There's not. It provides breakfast and lunch, and it
Okay.
costs quite a bit of money. It's about 58 million, part of the budget.
Okay.
No, there's no expiration.
And then the increased teacher salaries, I recall, and I'm not stating this correctly, I probably am not, but in previous years, it was working to get everybody up to like that, starting income or starting salary, that was a higher starting rate. Are they trying to push that up in 2024, or what is the premise of that intent there?
So 4 years ago, our baseline starting salary for teachers was $30,000, and then we went to 40
Yep.
in a last session, 2 sessions ago, and then this is a continuation of that movement to 50.
Okay,
50 is still the lowest in all of New England, but if we want to be competitive to encourage people to go into teaching, we need to be competitive at least within the New England states, so.
great, thank you.
And that would be, the state sets it up front, and then it swings into the GPS model, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Please, Counselor Bill.
So I see the state's looking after themselves and talking about the property tax deferral program, and allows the state to collect their due proceeds at the time of death. And I wondered, we've had this conversation, Steve, you and I, and the town manager, and we're still looking for relief on the local level too, where when the town provides a tax deferral, if you will, for any number of different reasons, but we don't get a chance to get that money back upon the person's death or sale of the property. And so I wonder if there's any thought process about providing relief for towns also.
Yes, there is a bill that was held over from the first session. That means we didn't finish it last summer. And it's still on the table and ready for action in the second session before the Taxation Committee. It's a bill that I sponsored at the request of Cumberland, which would allow cities and towns across the state, by ordinance, to create their own stabilization programs. So they'd freeze taxes at current levels, and then as the tax liability increases incrementally over the years, the town or city would, in effect, run a tab on the property owner. It would not be reimbursed by the state, but would simply, in effect, have an ongoing lien, and then upon death or sale or one of those triggering events, would then recover from the owner or the or the estate the full amount of the amount not paid plus interest. Now, that's before the taxation committee. We had a public hearing, and I think at least 3 so-called work sessions on that, extending through early June, before they finally, I think their attention was diverted to the abolition of statewide stabilization, and they couldn't quite grapple with this, or didn't have the time to grapple with this issue. In fact, the last time we were there on June 6th was the last day they were authorized to meet for the entire session, even though we went another month longer. So it's coming up again at some point in January, and we'll have more to say about that when that happens.
In addition to that, really what I'm specifically going after is when someone would ask for property tax relief because they can't afford to pay their taxes. And in the case of them having a reverse mortgage on their home, the town is forced to give them an abatement, but there's no recourse for us to come back after their passing to recapture that. So what I'm looking for is a mechanism so that it puts the towns in the first position, so that when we offer an abatement to somebody for financial needs or health needs, that upon their passing, the community can recoup those costs. And it's not that we're being greedy. I think it's just fair that the town has an opportunity to at least get in line before anybody else does.
Yeah, I understand your point, Bob. I remember well from my days in the council that the abatement process is strictly voluntary on the council's part. There's no mandate that you give one out or that every applicant gets one. It's a discretionary call. And it always, I'm not aware of any legislation pending that would create a right to recover the amount abated from the recipient of the abatement.
Well, I brought that to your attention because it sounds like the state was doing that for themselves. In that, recoup the unpaid taxes after the owner passes and the estate is settled. So I'd just like to think that the towns might have that same opportunity also.
Good point, and we'll follow that.
Okay, my second question is, this is the oldest state in the nation. If we look at the number of nursing homes that have closed in the last 25 years, it's still a downward trend. And I'd like to think that, personally, I'd like to have a home in the town of Cumberland for assisted living, nursing care, end-of-life care, and I'd like to think that the state, the legislators, are looking at those issues and looking at funding mechanisms. And sometimes we legislate ourselves into oblivion, and I think sometimes in the state of nursing home and daycare centers, we keep raising the bar, and mom and dad say, I'm going to close my shop. I can't comply. So sometimes compliance is well-meaning, and legislative goals are well-meaning, but the end result is we have fewer opportunities for child daycare, and we have fewer opportunities for nursing and elder care. So I just want to draw that to your attention, and when you go back to work, give that some thought.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. And to that point, Teresa, that kind of reminds me, or Senator Peirce, that reminds me about the overlay that you talked about, the services that can be overlaid in some of those Avesta-type units that you were talking about. Am I
Yeah,
missing
that-
something?
That's with the housing first, so that's
Right.
for, addresses specifically people who are chronically homeless. So we're paying for those 24/7 wraparound services. So Main State Housing will work with a developer like Avesta. They'll build an apartment building. 3 of these exist in Portland, 1 in Bangor right now. And then the money, and the staffing, DHHS will run up at the state, and it comes through the proceeds we get from the real estate transfer tax that helps pay for that. Actually, not very expensive to have those wraparound services. They're people who will facilitate people getting to the doctor, doing disputes with your neighbor, whatever it might be that might happen. So there's nothing that a municipality would have involvement in that unless they decided to locate a property in their town,
Right.
which would be that. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, so I
Okay.
guess I'm just thinking about your comment of as you look to the future, as you see a dwindling number of
Nursing homes?
nursing homes and elder care facilities, as you move, I think the struggle that we've found as a council is over, dozens of meetings with affordable housing developers. There's a fundamental difference, at least in our mind, between affordable housing and then long-term care housing, where like once you add that medical piece, that care to it, it becomes prohibitively expensive for a town to even consider taking that on and for the numbers to even work. And I think that's where Bob might be going here, is this idea that maybe that the overlay for services and something to that effect could be used, that's a similar model could be used where maybe funding becomes available for towns to be able to use for the overlay of certain types of medical services, because they've already got the affordability piece kind of nailed down, but then maybe long-term care might be something that could be parlayed into that in the future.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any nursing homes other than the vet homes that are actually run solely by the state. Most of those are private operations
Right.
that have received quite a bit of funding.
Maine Veterans Homes is a private.
Oh, okay, so, yeah, so I'm not, I'm unaware of, maybe you know of, any town ownership of assisted living spots.
And I'm not even saying that they necessarily need to be town-owned, but just
Okay.
to figure out the finances in the future for towns to make it easier for them to construct and build these types of facilities in the future. And I think, on the tax side of things, I know Representative Moriarty and Senator Peirce, you guys have been very instrumental in us trying to draft that bill and put that forward for the legislature, and hopefully that moves forward in the next session as well. Do we have any other comments or? Yes, please.
I was also wondering, following the devastating incident in Lewiston, whether or not there was any discussion, or you anticipate any discussion around yellow flag laws, red flag laws.
I think, absolutely, I think we were all saddened and horrified by what happened, what we thought would never happen in our state. My understanding is, and from conversations I've had at the legislative level, is that people are talking about the things that we might need to be doing, looking to the future to have common sense safety measures that protect people at a higher level than they did recently. The governor has put together a commission to look at what happened and why. I think that's a prudent approach with a really amazing group of people that have been appointed to that. So I think we don't go back into session, though, until January, so I think we have a number, Representative Moriarty sits on the Judiciary Committee who deals with a number of the gun safety bills. I don't know if you have anything to add to that comment, or?
Teague, I anticipated that somebody might ask, what big issues do the both of you foresee coming up in the second session that we might not otherwise be aware of? And at the top of my list is the Lewiston shootings and the aftermath. And before the shootings, I would not have said that firearm and gun safety issues would have been a big issue this coming legislature. There were at least 3 fairly important bills that didn't make it last spring, and so I didn't see a real push for that until the shootings occurred. And now, as I understand, there are discussions underway. We know that the governor has appointed an independent commission to study the events and to determine, among other things, I believe, whether the yellow flag law could have been invoked, and if not, why not, and whether the red flag approach makes more sense. And they'll be dealing with other issues as well. But I can't be specific because nothing has crystallized at this point, but I do think that the ramifications of the shootings will become a major issue in the short session.
Please,
Kig,
Councilor
I'm
Weeks.
really glad you brought that up. So I've been very deeply involved with the aftermath of the Lewiston shooting. And one of the things that's really has come out by several of the agencies I've spoken to, Steve, is the yellow flag law is just so damn hard to put into action. I talked to a deputy in Knox County. They've only done 2, and he's done both of them. It took him 2 days on each one, and they took him off the road. They dedicated him just to do this yellow flag on this one individual, and then later on he did another one. But it took him 2 days. And most rural Maine law enforcement, they don't have the availability of just going off the road and doing a yellow flag. So it's pretty tough. And that's the one constant thing I've heard is that we would be willing to do more of these and get more involved. It's just so hard for us to do it. And I would certainly encourage you and the senator to, if you have a chance, to streamline the process, to do so.
Right, I agree with your comments, Mike. As you know, it begins with protective custody, goes then to a psychological or psychiatric evaluation, then goes to a judge who's got to issue an order which is valid for 14 days but can be extended. The toughest part of that scenario, I think, is getting a genuine evaluation from a mental health provider. The numbers in that profession are down substantially from what they were 2 or 3 years ago. People have left for a number of reasons. There was a big article in the paper about this, the Sunday paper, not too long ago. But I think that is really an unworkable encumbrance to effective law enforcement. And I think that the idea was that you need something substantive from the medical or the mental health perspective before you begin to take someone's firearms away, even temporarily. And I understand that point of view, but I just don't think that it's truly workable. And as you point out, the yellow flag law has not been used that many times, and I think it's because it is so multifaceted, and there are too many steps.
Thank you both.
Yeah, I heard that from my police chief as well, that there are instances where it's worked and it's done, but it is very cumbersome, and that's when you don't need that kind of cumbersome material. So I think definitely definitely is something we owe it to the memory of the 18 people and the 13 who survived, and truly to the state of Maine to really take a strong, hard look at this issue. I think Mainers have a long, rich tradition of hunting and gun ownership and safe gun ownership, and I think all Mainers across the state are interested in making sure that we're as safe as we can be within those parameters, so.
I have one more thing.
Please.
I just want to take this opportunity while you're here to publicly thank you each for your time. I have been in touch with both of you about school funding and finance, and I want the public to know that although that's not our purview here on the town council, it's a concern because it's such a large portion of where property taxes go in this community. And I want to thank you both for your willingness to advocate for future funding opportunities coming up. So I just wanted the public to know that we're not ignoring that part, and that I have tasked everybody here with advocating to you and your colleagues to help us out.
Thank you, Shirley. Well, unless there's any other questions or comments, thank you both very much for coming. We know you're both very busy, and you're about to be much more busy very soon. So
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. We appreciate your time as well, so.
yeah, thank you.
I know.
You. Okay, we now, Mr. Manager, I'm sorry, did you have anything else under manager's report?
Just one quick thing. Prior to COVID, our food pantry was servicing about 35 families while we were open every week. And since COVID, we have basically eclipsed 80 to 95 families, and it's really difficult out there. Thanksgiving week is hard to believe it. It's next week. But this Friday is our Thanksgiving basket giveaway at the food pantry. On our town website, we do have an opportunity for citizens to contribute. What we have been doing for about the last 8 or 9 years have been basically asking for the baskets to be donated by the community, and the community has stepped up in a huge way. So this year, the response, I don't know if people don't know the Thanksgiving's next week or it's coming right up, but it's really sneaking up on everybody. But on the website, we have a lot of areas that still people have an opportunity to give and be part of this great tradition that this community has stepped up 100% every year. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And please just go onto the town website, look under the Thanksgiving program, click on the hyperlink, and you'll see what's available, everything from sour cream to sweet potatoes. And all day Thursday, we've got the swim team in here again. They're an amazing group of kids that volunteer to help organize everything and get everything ready for Friday's giveaway. So whatever you can do to help, it would be much appreciated. Thank you.
That's great.
Can I
Councilor
ask a
Scarpelli.
follow-up on that? I saw on social media requests for, by Bert Kendall and his group for
Perkins,
help
yeah.
for food baskets for veterans. Is he working with you? Because he's doing sort of Cumberland and Yarmouth, and I was unclear on how that might be.
Yeah, so what Bert has done over the, gosh, since we've had the food pantry, 11, 12 years, he has basically donated to both of the food pantries so that could go towards some of those items on the list for the Thanksgiving baskets. And we do have veterans that do participate at the pantry.
Okay, so there is an overlap there.
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Manager, and thanks for all your work at the food pantry as well. Okay, we now go to public discussion. Public discussion is for comments and on items that are not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Rebuttal comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Public discussion topics may be brought up again under new business for further council discussion. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the council on an item that's not on the agenda? Please.
Before I talk, I have a procedural question on tonight's meeting. Is the public not allowed to ask representatives when they come here questions at the meeting? It was only offered to the council. If I had a question for Mr. Moriarty, I could not ask it.
That's a good
I'm
question.
just wondering about that.
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I guess perhaps we could have. You could also reach out to them at any time, but I don't.
I know, but my
didn't.
question would, maybe people out in TV land would have liked to have known about it. too.
Sure, right.
You people,
That's a good point.
people in the government tend to think that us citizens know what's going on, and we don't. You know, so I've been accused of that I should know this or that, and I don't. This government stuff is pretty complicated, yeah. So, and there's a lot of people out here like me that don't really know what's going on. So sometimes, maybe I do know the answer, but I'm asking it for other people. So, anyway, I just wanted the procedure, because I did have a question for them. I will be in touch with them. All right, so now what I wanted to talk about is requests for proposals. It came to my attention that the roundabout was a request for proposals that was sent out. It said proposals on it. So my first question is, did it go to more than just Goral Palmer or just Goral Palmer?
More than Goral Palmer.
It did, and they came back with the best.
They were interviewed with 2 other engineers.
Yeah, I just wondered how that worked. Again, I don't know how it works, so. So now, does that mean that we're married to them through the project when it comes time to build it and stuff?
No,
No, that wasn't a proposal. It looked, reading it, like it was to work with them right through the project.
they are obligated to get us to the report that's being sent to the state, and after that, it's up to the council if they want to choose to continue.
Okay, good. Well, again, I don't understand these things, so, and I think a lot of people don't understand them. So they did a lot of study there. Do we pay for that, or because it's a request for proposal, that's a free for the town? They do it on their,
There was a fee associated with the proposal, and that was shared 50-50 with the state and the town.
okay, I just wondered how it works. So the next question involves the affordable housing request for a proposal. The deadline is in. Do we have proposals?
We do.
How many?
One.
One. Is you at liberty to say from who?
Not at this time. We're still negotiating with that person. Once the council makes a decision to move forward or not to move forward, it becomes a public document.
Okay. Just, again, I don't know how it works, so trying to see. So will we have a chance to talk about that, the public again, or not?
Absolutely.
At the meetings that are in the proposal?
It most likely will be in December.
Okay. All right. That's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public would like to address the council on an item that's not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will close public discussion, and we will move directly into legislation and policy. First item on the agenda is 23-122, to consider and act on adopting a policy to support grassland bird nesting success by delaying mowing at Twin Brook and fields at Stiles Way until July 15th. We've had, obviously, we have a wonderful committee, the Lands and Conservation Commission, I should say, actually, that has various subcommittees. And one of the items that the LCC has brought forward to us is what we can do here at the town of Cumberland to help protect local nesting birds, such as the bobolinks, the Savannah sparrows, and eastern meadowlarks specifically, here in town on town-owned property. And it came to our attention that one of the best ways for us to do this would be to delay any mowing that we have on these non-athletic fields, the particular type of grassland fields in our town at Twin Brook and also on Stiles Way between mid-May and not to mow until after July 15th. And so we had a workshop this evening to discuss this with the Lands and Conservation Commission, the kind of the thought process behind this, where this need came from, what we as the town are effectively kind of already doing, but we don't have a policy in place specifically writing this out. The LCC, and particularly Mike Schwint and Gordon Lichter, have come back multiple times to us with some proposed language, and we appreciate those drafts and reworks as many times as those have come back. But I think we've gotten to a point now where we have a pretty solid framework to operate off of here, just basically making it clear that the purpose of this is to help ensure the survival of these nesting birds in our community, and that we do have these specific areas identified, and that we have the opportunity here in the town to really protect those nesting habitats for these rapidly declining grassland bird species. I will open it up to anyone from the Lands and Conservation Commission if you would like to address the council, or if you feel, I see you are being recommended. So please. Yes, you did.
First round draft.
Good evening. My name is Sally Stockwell. I'm the vice chair of the Forestry Subcommittee of the Conservation Commission. And for some reason, we got tagged with doing grassland birds in addition to the forests. But in any case, we've been working with a group called Ag Allies over the last year and a half or so that work across the state with municipalities, with landowners, with farmers to encourage landowners where they can to delay mowing to allow these seriously declining birds to have a chance at nesting. And we're really excited when they came here to visit our properties, town properties. They were quite surprised by what they found. It's like, wow, you guys have some really great habitat here and a lot of nesting pairs, more than we would have expected. One of the better sites that we are aware of in much of southern Maine. So we felt that it was a really wonderful opportunity for the town to sort of step up and formalize our involvement with helping these birds have a chance at nesting, raising their young, and then continuing on with the next generation, just like we're all trying to do with our own families. So we're just trying to give them a good home and a good chance at nesting success, and we'd really appreciate your agreeing to the policy.
Thank you very much. Anyone from the council have any comments or questions? No? I know we workshopped this quite a bit this evening before we got up here. Seeing none? Go ahead,
Shirley.
Councilor Bell.
I'm happy to put this to a motion, but before I do that, I think that one of the things that, in particular my own life, is a little bit better understanding of the world around me. And that might be just because I've got more free time as I age and no children at home and things like that. But we've had a lot of presentations over the years, and we know we've talked about tree cutting, we've talked about invasive species, and you know, I know what invasive species are because I have them in my backyard. And this fall, I cut some of it down, and my wife says, "Why don't you run it through the tripper?" And I said, "Well, if you want to handle these thorns and run it through the tripper, you have at it." I think I let them lay there a bit, and maybe in the spring we might have another go at it. But anyways, so, you know, life is an ongoing education process, and so I think, you know, if we look at our sustainability and what this town is trying to achieve, this is just another thing that shows us that we are making a conscious effort to be respectful of the community we live in, the environment that we live in, and, you know, as with any decision we make, there are winners and losers, and sometimes it's humanity that might end up being the loser and the wildlife be the winner. You know, we also have seen what unrestricted growth of wildlife happens, and some of the problems that causes too. And, you know, we can all point to the success of the reintroduction of turkeys in the state of Maine and across America. And then we look at, you know, an overgrowth of deer in southern Maine and the, you know, the inability to sometimes control that. So I'm certainly in favor of this proposal this evening, and it's just, I think it reflects the step of sustainability, responsibility, and commitment to what we want this community to look like.
Please.
Bob, the only thing that worries me on this motion is the hard date of July 15th. Not the motion itself, but the hard date. I mean, if we take a summer like this, or any summer when you're trying to hay, and if Jeff's got a couple days and we're not worried about the birds, and it's the 12th or the 13th, he can't go. So the hard date is what I'm just having a tough time with.
I have less of an issue with the hard date because the policy says until July 15th unless otherwise notified by the Lands and Conservation Commission. And that was going to be the comment when I raised my hand earlier. I think what we're trying to do now is to put in place a policy that will be for the future. What I saw sitting around the table tonight was real collaboration between farmers and the Land and Conservation Commission, and I was proud that that still happens in our community. That I heard from Lands and Conservation that, you know, if you can get in there on the 12th, that might work. And if Sally says, oh no, the babies haven't hatched because they were frozen the first lay or something, then, you know, Jeff's willing to go a couple, you know. But I think this at least shows the future that we're thinking about this and we have concerns about this going forward. I did have one issue with the last sentence in the policy regarding, and I'm gonna be the one that takes it on. Land and Conservation did not want to take on dogs, but I would like to have that last line read. It currently reads, and requesting that all dogs be either leashed or kept away from these areas during that period. I would like to say requesting that all dogs be leashed and kept away from those areas, or just say requesting that all dogs be kept away from these areas during these times. Because they'll be marked out areas. It's not all of Twin Brooks. It's marked nesting habitats. And you might have a dog on a leash, but if it was my poorly behaved Boston Terrier, he would be barking and growling and creating a huge commotion for nesting pairs. And I don't think a leash is going to make one bit of difference. Hiding him in my jacket might be the only way to stop him from barking. So,
Yep.
I mean,
So first off, I really appreciate you bringing up the collaboration because I felt like that tonight too. I really want to thank Jeff Story for coming and giving us his insights as to when he mows and how he does it and when the right time for him is. And I also felt like there was great collaboration on the LCC side, just saying, hey, well, you know, if it's a week earlier and we can verify that there's no nesting birds there, we'll happily let you know so we can get Jeff moving earlier. So I really appreciated that. I think given the fact that the last sentence of this is not a mandate as much as a request that would be put on signage, right? I don't personally see an issue with changing it to "and," but I don't know the area well enough, I guess, to wonder, is that going to affect every single, is that a natural walkway for folks with their dogs that would create a roadblock and a bottleneck that might, if that or provides that? That's my only thought. Anyone else have thoughts on this? I think the language, again, because it's a recommendation at this point, gives folks notice that the dogs themselves could be a hindrance to that natural nesting process. I'm okay with it as or. My bigger concern with changing it to "and" is just only that folks then read it and they say, well, I can't go this direction for the next quarter mile, I got to go all the way around this other side now, as opposed to just putting your dog on a leash and hopefully they're not barking the entire time.
Do we want to ask if they have any opinion?
Yeah, does the LCC have any thoughts on that? Okay.
Hi, everybody. Brad Zitsky. I live at 24 Willow Lane. I'm a Cumberland resident, dog owner, and I happen to be a wildlife biologist for Maine Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. I've been with them for nearly 11 years, professional wildlife biologist for 20. And specifically, I'm a bird biologist as well. I'm one of only 5 dedicated bird biologists in the state. I'm the shorebird biologist, but a couple of species of my shorebirds under my purview happen to actually live in grasslands, as strange as that might be. Not much shore nearby, but I spend a lot of time in grasslands. Species I work with a lot that I have an ongoing research project with is called the upland sandpiper. Similar types of habitat as the grassland passerin or songbird species we're talking about here. And those habitats are under threat of destruction statewide. Maybe destruction is a little bit strong, but what we're seeing in our department is a lot of solar and wind power companies coming in, looking at these open spaces, thinking these spaces are great areas to put up a wind farm or a solar farm. It's like the one on Route 1 at the Yarmouth Town line. People are searching out those areas for development. So any kind of agreement we can do to protect this, get into the weeds, no pun intended, of the biological weeds of taxa. So grassland bird species, you know, those types of habitats are being sought out for development all over the place. Now, we've got a different here and wonderful place, Twin Brook, where I go all the time with my family and my pets. It was actually the first thing that brought my wife and I to Cumberland 12 years ago was Twin Brook skiing from living in Portland after being a fairly recent transplant. But really, we need to do everything we can to protect those habitats. And I am so grateful for the community of advancing this topic. I'm just totally rambling. Dogs, Sally, dogs. So, I spend a lot of my time with coastal species, shore birds and all that. And dogs are one of the biggest issues we see with a lot of piping plovers. For those of you who spend any time on a sandy beach in Maine, you know what I'm talking about. Highly disturbing towards those animals. These birds see dogs as a possible predator, predatory threat, whether they're on leash or not. So I totally agree with Counselor Story King about keeping those dogs out of that area, not just on leash, but out of that area. And I say that as someone who walks that loop a lot, but what we've found a lot, Maine Audubon and Gilsland Farm and Falmouth, at one point allowed dogs, and then they cut off dogs. There was a little bit of a disagreement at first, but people get used to that. We see that on a lot of our beaches as well, that whenever you make a change, there's obviously going to be an initial disagreement. Nobody's got the super clock on me up here, but
Pretty quick,
I
though.
feel like I'm pretty close to my 5, but anyways,
So-
I
so
just
you-
want to speak in support of that, in support of keeping dogs out of that area that was identified specifically by Maeve McGowan from Ag Allies as being a pretty critical spot
Okay.
for birds, but anyways.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you for that.
So that being said, are we able to modify the verbiage tonight?
We certainly can. My thought is I want to make sure we're not creating a bottleneck, right, on the property itself.
Well, I don't think we're requesting that all dogs be kept off from Twin Brooks, just away from the nesting areas.
Correct, which those areas
The
will be
marked
marked.
areas that we will be marking as a town.
Mr. Manager, can I get any input you have
Yeah,
on this,
just a
please?
few things. Enforcement is going to be really difficult because we have one ACO shared between three communities. So that's always the first thing I look at is it enforceable? I think the advisory compliance signs are probably 60 to 70% compliance, but then we'll get the 30% say, well, it says off leash, so I'm going to be off leash. And if we change the policy at Twin Brook to be on leash during that season, it's going to be very difficult to be on the Tuttle Road side off leash because all of those fields are basically restricted from mowing. So there could be bobolinks in the front, it could be on the side, in the back, there's lots of areas. All we have is about 8-foot walking paths all the way through there that connect to the wood trails, connect to the athletic fields. So there are going to be a lot of pockets of these grasslands that could be impacted by essentially dogs off leash. And the only secondary piece of that is if you're restricting dogs to be on leash at Twin Brooks, that's in conflict with another, I think, ordinance policy. And we have dogs, the dog ordinance or the animal ordinance is one of the two. It basically lists the parks where dogs are permitted on leash and off leash. So we might want to just look at that and, give notice that this is a policy being considered so that those people that are not in the room tonight, the dog owners, may have an opportunity to share their side. And I no longer am a dog owner, thankfully, so I have no, no dog in this fight, so.
So just to make sure I'm clear on this, so at Twin Brook in general, dogs may be unleashed?
Under voice control, which
Under voice
is
control,
very
okay.
subjective.
Right, okay. And so what we're saying here, as it's currently written, is that in this area during this time, it would be requested that all dogs either be leashed or kept away from these areas altogether.
I would say they would have to be leashed, because I don't know how they could do it effectively,
Right,
especially.
I guess my question would be, is it even possible then for dogs to be leashed and kept away from that area?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, people can walk, there are a lot of size dogs that can walk on a leash without you being pulled into the grass areas.
Oh, no, I get
So-
that. I guess I'm just thinking geographically of if they're needing to be leashed and then kept away from this area, is that conflicting with the voice control other provisions?
Yeah,
that
the
you're
voice
talking about?
control won't work. Yeah, if you've got a bird dog, they're going in.
Unless you're Ron Cobb's bird dog,
Yeah, yeah.
but most dogs aren't that well trained.
Mine Mine's better than my children.
Please.
I think if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. So I would be in support of leashing during this period. I mean, I think that we have so many trails in this town. John Jensenius does an incredible job with his subcommittee on the LCC. There are a lot of spaces. I'm a dog owner. I love to walk my dogs, but I think if we're going to take the steps to protect these birds, let's do it the right way, and give them every fighting chance. Right? I mean, what was the statistic, Mike, that you told us that we've lost 50% of all nesting, 53% of all nesting birds since 1970? Grassland birds, 53% of all grassland birds since 1970.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm hearing then is that the language of, it would basically just be that all dogs be kept away from these areas during this time. So the leash issue isn't even something that would be discussed. Is that what I'm hearing? Because if even a dog on a leash is gonna bother these birds, then why do we even have the language about a leash in there? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
That's why I said
Yeah.
first with the and, or the second choice would be just to say that all dogs be kept away from these areas during that time.
From an enforceability standpoint, I don't know if that's realistic. I think it's realistic to say that they need to be on a leash.
I have a quick question here. Who drafted this?
It was kind of a mixture of the LCC with me and Tig and Bill and a few other folks.
I suggest we leave it and come back next year and see if it has worked or hasn't worked.
I don't think we want to say come back, well, you mean leave it as is and look at revising it the following year if necessary?
Right.
After it's been implemented.
Yes.
I'm getting,
Sorry, folks, for throwing the semantics into
that's okay.
to the
I
mix.
just want to make sure, because that's a pretty big change to go from either you leash your dog in this area or you just keep them away altogether. If we take away the leash portion of that language, then it's effectively just all dogs being kept away from this area, which maybe is, I think, maybe beneficial, which I know we've got folks in the audience who are hoorahing that. But I'm concerned as to maybe there's a middle road here that we can
I think
get, where we would actually get more compliance.
the word in the crux of it all is the either.
Well, one of them is
And
preferred,
so I
right?
would say that all dogs be leashed or kept away from these areas. Or I would actually say and kept away
If
from
I-
these areas.
Not to get into the weeds.
We're in the weeds.
We're in the weeds.
Yep.
We came here because of a mowing concern, you know, and now we're talking about dogs. And I'm gonna defer to the Lands and Conservation Commission who drafted this. They were the major draftee, and so,
I can't enforce a policy, so there's no legal recourse against a policy. And it would have to go back into the ordinance committee, and
Okay.
that would have to be redrafted if that's what the council wishes to do. That would be a separate public hearing. So regardless, if that's the direction you want to send this to the ordinance committee, send it to the ordinance committee, and then come back with a secondary public hearing for changes in the use policy of Twin
So we
Brook.
could recommend this policy tonight.
Yep.
Pass it tonight, and if they choose to go on and change your ands and your ors and your ethers and your nors, come back at us.
But come through the ordinance
Ordinance
committee,
committee.
through ordinance committee, if we're gonna impact the dog usages of
So
Twin
Bob and I
Brook.
can fight it out there.
Sounds like.
Correct, and I think Counselor Cotton.
How about just a simple sign that says, please respect the birds, keep your dog on a leash from this date to this date, please. I mean,
All we gotta do.
That's part of it already. But I thought to, was it Brad?
Yes.
To Brad's point, any presence of dog in this area, leashed or unleashed, is bad news bears, it sounds like.
So, as a biologist, I speak in black and white. That's like that's the ideal end of the spectrum, but I'm also a realist, and I realize that when I said that I supported the no dogs, I wasn't actually saying go no dogs. A lot of the towns that I've worked with on the coast in regarding animal control ordinances on the beach, and let me tell you, that's a very, very sticky subject. There's a compromise that needs to happen, but realistically, I agree with Councillor Kopp that having some signage there, and I think Manager Shane said that, 70% compliance? I think that's pretty darn good. The fact that these birds have been here for the last couple of years, that we've had surveys already without any real ordinances, I mean, that speaks a lot to what's happening already. We've got a very respectful community here, for the most part, that I wouldn't go to extremes, because you're just gonna bring out other extremes on that end, so.
Yep, I think that was very well said. Thank you. Okay, so I think I'm settled on the current language, I think is a good starting point. And again, if this needs to be revisited a year from now and changes need to be made, those can be done then. But thank you for all the input. And any other questions or comments from the public or from the council on this? Okay, well, I will welcome some form of a motion. Councilor Bell.
I move to adopt a policy to support grassland bird nesting success by delaying mowing at Twin Brooks and fields at Styleway until July 15th, as recommended by the Lands and Conservation Commission.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion from the council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda is 23-123, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on accepting Peaceful Way as a town road. Mr. Manager, I may push a little bit of this to you, but it's my understanding that in the Blanchard Oaks subdivision, there is an area known as Peaceful Way, a new road that's been built. It's currently I want to use the correct terminology here, a private road but built to Cumberland's public road standards.
Cumberland subdivision standards,
Excuse me,
correct.
Cumberland subdivision standards. And they are seeking now to have that road be admitted and accepted as a public road.
That's correct.
Okay. And that our attorneys and the engineers have looked at this road, have signed off on whether it meets the various engineering standards that are needed to comply with town standards for public roads. Any questions? I know this is, well, I guess, first question that I would have is, how frequently are roads accepted from a subdivision into a public road process in the town?
Well, in the last 20 years and 5 months, there has not been a road not accepted that has been brought forward to the council for public road acceptance. Just roads of record, Nautical Way, Clipper Street, Wyman Way, the extension of Drown Road, Fuller Way, Captain's Way, Castle Rock, Chet's Way, Rose Drive, and Autumn Lane are the only two that I can think of that actually connect. That was required by the planning board. Thomas Drive, Island Pond Road, Rooster Ridge, and Bud's Trail. Those are all roads that have been built in the last 20 years that I could recall quickly, that were brought before the council for public road acceptance. I will share with you, there is no requirement to accept a road. That is totally on the purview of the council, and everyone that basically brings a subdivision road forward for acceptance understands that this is totally up to the council. It's up or down, and it's defensible, and that's the way it's been written in our ordinances for a very, very long time. What the comprehensive plan says is that they want to see more connectivity in roads, and that falls essentially on the planning board to push that. It was a battle to get Rose Drive and Autumn Lane connected, and they successfully did that, which was great. But there have been others, as Councilor Kopp has pointed out to me, why wasn't this connected to the other road that will probably be before you next year, off of Orchard Road, that it almost abuts to? It's probably less than 100 yards away, and that was not, I don't even believe there was a discussion at the planning board about connecting those two. So that was a swing and a miss by staff, I would say, and that in the future, we have to basically at least have the easements drawn so that even if the town had to connect it in the future sometime, it would be available, because I don't think it's even possible now with those two projects to be connected.
Councilor Vail, did you have a comment?
This is an exercise pro forma in some level. My only real question is, when this was taken under planning board review, was this presented as this was going to be a public way?
I think it went back and forth. The developer wasn't sure if they were going to, because I required additional underdrain and additional improvements to the land that he didn't have initially. I said, you're gonna have to do these anyway to meet the subdivision ordinance. And then he asked, what does that mean? I said, well, that makes it eligible for a public road acceptance if it is built entirely to the subdivision standard. So they decided to build it to the subdivision standard.
Is there any conversation at the planning board level that it was their understanding that this was going to be a public road?
Again, that went back and forth, and at the time of their presentation to the planning board, they weren't clear if it was gonna be brought forward as a public road. So that to me is really up to the developer to bring forward. Some developments want to keep them private roads, and some, for some reason, for obvious reasons, want to bring it forward as public roads. I think the big issue has always been, at the council level, when Bill Stiles was here, he was always the one to send in. It was always for financial reasons. It's, how much does a road cost us? How much every time we accept another road does that cost us? I would basically recommend that if you decide to go in a different route with road acceptances, making them all public in the future, that we should codify that, or at least let people know at the planning board and subdivision level that this won't be eligible. Many towns do not accept roads as public roads.
I've noticed in the packet, we do have some information regarding the cost. It's kind of separated into capital costs as well as just ongoing yearly annual costs.
Right.
It looks like the large upfront capital costs would be paving, which is kind of done once every 10 years potentially on a road, right?
15 to 20 years
Okay.
on subdivisions, yeah.
But is this number then based off 10-year paving plan? It looks like?
It's probably closer to 15. It won't be paved in the next 10 years.
Okay. And then the annual costs would be things like sweeping, catch basin cleaning, painting, plowing during storms and
That's
things of that
correct.
nature?
Yep.
Okay. And just to make sure everyone's clear, these folks are paying property taxes, and their property taxes effectively would be going towards these services on a public road as well?
Correct.
Yep. Okay.
To all public roads. I mean, it
To
all
all-
kind of is
correct.
aggregated. Yeah.
Right. Council Cop?
Excuse me. I've ridden up into this development 2 or 3 times over the last week. And adjacent to this development is Orchard Cove, which is off from Haskell Road, which is known as Cortlandt Court. If you drive into the end of Cortlandt Court, which is a private road, and they have not asked for us to accept it yet, but I'm sure it's coming, you literally can throw a rock from one development to the other. My gut feeling is the planning board should have had some better foresight on this, and this should have been a through street. Or is it the fact that he sold another house lot, the developer did, for $250,000 because he didn't want to continue the road through to connect the 2 roads? So I have heartburn accepting this road because these roads should have connected. It's ridiculous if you ride up in there to see how short a distance it is between these 2 roads. It should have been a through street. I cannot, for the life of me, figure out why they didn't connect the 2 roads. And now they want us to accept it, so you gotta drive in, plow it, drive back out, then go around to the other side of town next year when Cortlandt Court comes up and wants us to do the same thing with them. Just doesn't make any sense. The developers should have had the foresight to see this should have been a through street, along with the planning board.
Do you have a comment?
I'm just wondering why they would have, sorry, Bill. I'm wondering why they would have not done that. You know what I mean? Like, what would have been the benefit on their end to not make it public
Selling
roads?
another house lot.
Okay.
Well,
That's-
sometimes it's timing, though. Sometimes these projects lag in time from when one subdivision is approved to when the next one comes in.
Yep.
And that's what I'm thinking about this one. I think Cortlandt Court actually came first, and it
It
took a
did.
while to get started.
Yeah.
And then later on, the other subdivision came in, and I think that might have been our first subdivision under the conservation subdivision rules, so.
I believe it
A
was.
lot of the land has been set aside and basically has already been approved for acceptance by you. So I think I don't know. I don't know, Ron. I think it's a really good point, and I can't explain why they weren't connected.
And I'm not blaming the developer as much as I think I'm blaming the planning board, because
Well,
I
we
think.
take some
the
responsibility there too, the staff. You wouldn't have seen it as a council. It would have been the planning board and staff, and where they back up to each other like that. I know the open space, because I've had to go back and forth with it a lot, but I think there was some future look at that being connected to the big orchard, but the two roads, I don't even know if it was on anybody's conversation when we had it at the planning board, so.
So how would that be addressed in terms of remedying moving forward? I'm thinking, would that be something through ordinance? Then ordinance would then
Well, it's in the
dictate down to plan?
comprehensive plan, so it's already there. It should have, it really, there's not a lot of excuses that it wasn't caught, or it perhaps was discussed, but it's not mandated. So if there was a reason, I don't know what the back of that property looks like. Maybe Mike or Ron, you have a feeling on that Cortland Court, and
It's all hardwood.
Is it all like, there's no gullies or big ravines or any bridges
No.
that would be, so I don't know.
You literally, if you cut some trees down, you could drive your vehicle through there tomorrow.
Wow. So I don't know. I really don't have a good answer for you why they weren't connected.
Ron, I think it's a really, really great point. That said, I would hate to be as a resident, or I'm picturing myself as a resident there, and someone else made a poor decision, and now I, as a resident, am impacted by someone else's poor decision. And so I just think about the people that live on Peaceful Way that, you know, want to take their kid to the end of the driveway to get them on the school bus, and now instead they all have to go to the end of the road. Or, you know, I think about the services, and they're all paying taxes. And yes, someone made a poor decision, but I do want to just reframe a little bit and kind of put that consideration of the people that actually live on there. And there is, I don't know, I know it's not just about the school bus, but there is a joy of, you know, walking to the end of your driveway and putting your kid on the bus every day. And I would hate to see that taken away because of someone else's poor decision.
I just want to be clear that any neighborhood, regardless if we're public or private, has the ability to go to the SAD and request the bus come up their street. Many times, usually if it's the primary school grades, they will go up the streets. But if it's middle school or high school, they basically require them, regardless if it's public or private, to walk to the end of the road because of bus routes and the number of routes. So I just wanted to be careful that, and the same thing with trash. It's the same, they have the ability to bring a trash truck up the road if we request them, and they basically sign off as a private road or a public road.
I'm happy to reframe then.
No, I just wanted to make sure
I
that.
think it's important to note that we're all impacted by poor decisions sometimes, and I just want to think about the people that actually live on that street.
I would agree, and I would say I would just ask that ordinance or planning board is more mindful of this going forward as more things are developed.
I'm personally hesitant to go against 20 and a half years or 20 years, 5 months, whatever you quoted, of accepting these roads because we didn't catch something potentially at planning board stage, or we could have been more involved to ensure that any development was done in accordance with that comprehensive plan. I do think of these folks, like Tig mentioned, paying their taxes just like everyone else, which technically should be going to snow plowing, that now we can't do because the developer didn't, connect two different subdivisions, I guess. Yeah.
I guess what I would like to do is, moving forward, is to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Yeah,
I
how do
mean,
we do that?
My gut feeling is that they sold the house lot on the end of this street for X amount of dollars when it could have been a through street connecting to the other road because the developer saw the opportunity to make more money.
So, Ron, two things have to happen. They have to be close in the queue for the planning board to see that. So I'm thinking about the one off Orchard Road.
Yeah.
That road is a circle, and when you get to the end of it, it's a circle. So there are multiple lots at the circle, and if they don't plan ahead to connect that road as a through road, because they wouldn't have known that was going to be coming forward as a subdivision, they would have already had that design in place with a cul-de-sac, and that was already in the queue and kind of a done deal when the next subdivision came in place. So timing is a lot of times the biggest problem, and that's probably why even, Carla or Bill or even the planning board looked at it and said, it's not possible now because we've already approved this several months ahead of that.
Counselor Bill?
So, having had the luxury or the opposite of luxury, of spending 15 years on a planning board, I know that the conversations go back 20, 30 years. And the point, case in point was Glenview on Blanchard Road and the one on Greeley Road Extension, which the street name is escaping me right now. But
Oak Ridge?
no, across the other way. Frank and Sue McGinty lived on that road there, and, but anyways, those conversations have occurred. That was the understanding at the planning board level that any subdivision that came forward, there was a consideration was that it was not to be just a cul-de-sac, but consideration was given to the abutting land and how that would work. The rub with me here is the developer, forgive me for not feeling sorry for the taxpayers, but the developer never showed any discretion or direction, fault number one. Fault number two, for the planning board not to have had a clear understanding that this was going to be a public road upon acceptance of completion of infrastructure. So I think that to me, there's a question of saying, well, what do we have here? Do we just, maybe it'll be a public road, maybe it won't be a public road. So I think there has to be a little bit better understanding at the planning board level that we want to know what these issues are before they come here. And then I guess on a larger picture, if I recall, there was a period of time, and perhaps it's changed, that there was not an interest in the town taking on any more private subdivisions, that unless it was a through road that had some connectivity, there was little interest in the town accepting public roads. So
I don't know where that came from. It's not been since I've been here,
Yeah,
because
well,
that was an argument Bill Stiles would make every time a public road would come up. So I think
And
many of us were ingrained.
There is some basis to that, because I'm not just picking that out of my.
So one thing I would share with you, if you just think about it like an engineer for a second, if we're going to deal with subdivisions the way you described and the way Ron is describing as through roads, they would all really should come to the planning board as hammerheads, so that there's a T turnaround at the very end, and that hammerhead, the right-of-way, would go to the abutting property line. And that would get us to a place where we wouldn't, get one in the queue, and now that it's a big cul-de-sac, and then there's 4 property owners at the end of it that we can't come through.
I think Glenview was designed that way.
Well, it exactly is, and it still was difficult. There was a street, and I'm thinking of the name too, one of those little side streets that should have gone through, and it did not. So I think that is something we could meet and talk to the planning board about. 2 things, about, public road acceptance. The problem with the planning board is that's just a little box in the subdivision review. If you build it to these higher standards, the subdivision standards, it basically allows you to get to the next queue, which is the road acceptance ordinance, a separate ordinance now that has separated from the planning board, because we wanted to get more restrictive on what was required. And that's why all that attorney information is in front of you. That has worked well. The tricky part for the planning board is they don't make that decision if this is a public or a private road. That's really up to the developer, and it basically says, you meet these standards, you get in the queue, and then you go see the council. And in the ordinance, it doesn't automatically allow you acceptance just because you build these to the standard. It's totally up to the town council. Maybe that this should be a meeting about the road design and what types of road we want to see going forward, so they could be connected. Yep. And 2, do we want to still accept public roads? And that's a big question.
Councilor King?
Were the residents on this road noticed about this meeting?
Just through our normal process. We're not the planning board. We don't.
But they didn't receive individual notices?
Nope.
I'm just wondering, they live on a private road now, and it's a developer making the request to transfer it to.
Yeah, as every road it always is.
The empty room, to me, is telling.
And there's a green sign at the end of their road now.
Private road.
The green
Oh,
sign.
should
White
be a white
would
sign.
be
It's a
private.
white sign.
It should be
would
white.
Sign.
Yeah.
And it's currently
Currently
green?
green, yeah, it is.
Yeah, we don't do any services on the roads, so that's easy to
And
change.
who plowed it last year?
They did, we didn't, we don't touch it. They,
Oh, yep. Peaceful way.
Yeah.
Great. So,
I don't mean to make a big mess of this, but it just, to me, it's so obvious that it should have been a through street. If you all ride up in there, it literally is 3 times the length of this room to the next road. But like Bill said, had that been a hammerhead without a house at the end of the hammerhead, you certainly would have made them connect the road. Now, the cul-de-sac has got, I think, 3 houses around the edge of the cul-de-sac.
and then the cul-de-sac around the other street.
And then the cul-de-sac on the other side, so they probably, once they sold the lot, he said, well, there goes the end of the through street.
Are they developing the lot?
It's all developed.
It's all, both developments are
No, I
almost
know, but
fully
are they
developed.
developing that lot in particular? The one they just sold, they are?
Oh, yeah, the houses are all there.
They're all there.
They're all built. People are living in them.
There's no way to put a through street in now.
No, I mean, you would have to take land from one of the homeowners or several of the homeowners now, so.
I guess I am hesitant to drastically shift away from, I think the empty room makes a lot of sense, though. Like the fact that maybe this is something that can be tabled and we can maybe put out an additional notice to folks on that street to have them come and talk about this. But I'm hesitant to, because we weren't actively more involved in between the roads being built to public standards and being accepted as a public road process. Because we weren't inserted in that process to have it come to the council for us to talk about the specific flow of traffic and where that would go, of turning their request down.
Can I respond to public standards? In 1990, when I built my house, I built it to, at the time, road standards, which were not, I built it to private road standards that the town required, requiring a particular gravel base, a particular width of the road so that emergency vehicles could travel down and could travel back, and we've maintained the road ourselves over time. At no point would I ever expect, even if I paved it, the town to maintain my private road. And I'm just
Oh, sure.
throwing that out there because I built it according to the standards I was required to build it. And I could still dig out the papers that I had Scott Dugas do it before Story Brothers went into business to build it to the correct grade.
Yeah, and get that.
And
but-
Bob had the same
Bob.
thing probably when he built his house.
Standards are subjective. The conforming house of today is a non-conforming house of tomorrow.
I
And
agree.
road standards are much the same.
I
And,
agree.
So yes, we
So
all,
it's just a
we all built our
point.
house, we built our
It's a
road to
moving target.
a standard, and it's not necessarily the same today, yes.
I guess Mike and, oh, please, go ahead.
I was gonna say, the only, we could table it, right? But what are we looking to accomplish by that discussion, right? What is the end game there? Because the gap here is between planning board,
Yep.
us, it's an oversight. So, to Tig's point, they are resident paying taxes, the road is paved.
It is.
And, Mike, how long did you say it took before your road was repaved? Like 20 years?
Oh, no, 30,
Oh, my
35, 38 years?
So the incurred capital cost, which is $31,000, we're looking at 15 to 20 years. And the hard cost annually is $3,500 to $5,000. I think we just need to be realistic about what does tabling it mean for us? Like, what is it we're gonna accomplish by bringing more people in? I think it's something that I would motion to move forward with. I understand your point, Shirley. I think it's super valid. However, I think the intent of the developer all along was to have it be a public road. To Ron's point, I think he was looking to make money, and we didn't catch it. So I don't think we should impact residents because of that, unfortunately.
Councilor Cobb?
There's no question that it's a quality-built road. I mean, it's built to
Totally, yeah.
town standards. My only gripe is
I agree.
we dropped the ball,
Right,
the town.
and to that point of
Yeah.
tabling it,
And-
we get 20 people in the room and they say,
Right.
we want it, we can't go back and
And
rebuild that.
Bill,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they have to put a 2-year guarantee on it.
Yes,
There's a 2-year bond on the road now.
I mean, and I have no problem. I know that Cortland Court will be the next queue, once that's completely developed. So then you got 2 dead-end roads, snowplow come this way, snowplow come this way, they'll turn around, they'll go back out.
So-
It just
So the
makes-
problem again is timing.
Oh,
Cortland Court came first, and they
Right.
came in with a circular turnaround at the very end. If we don't change those standards to
And-
say hammerhead only to the property line, that will never change.
And if nothing else comes out of this tonight, I hope that that might change, because this, I encourage you all to drive down in there, because it really is ridiculous. I mean, the kids could talk to each other from house to house, from development to development, it's that close.
Yeah.
But, no, I have no problem with moving it forward. I don't think tabling it is gonna change the outcomes.
But I think you've raised an interesting point that this, as an example, can help us moving forward to catch future developments by making that change. So I think
And
that's
I
really
think the
important.
planning board needs to be made aware of it, and I mean.
Oh, they will be.
Yeah.
I'll be at their meeting next month, so
Yeah.
I'll talk about that as well.
Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, I would accept a motion from someone. Excuse me, thank you.
I know Shirley said nobody's here, but there is one person.
We would be happy if you have a public comment on
Yeah,
this.
I'll
Thank you very much
clarify
for
that, but-
catching me on that. I appreciate that.
There are no residents of the road
Of the
here.
road, yes.
Sorry, Bruce.
So I forgot to say my name and address last time, so it's Bruce Sherwin, Blanchard Road. As you know, I live out Blanchard, I live close to this development, and there's been a lot of developments out in our area in the past few years. You've mentioned Cortland and Peaceful Way, Stonewall Road, the West Branch, out in off Blackstrap, there's a thing called Fuller and Goose Pond. There's a lot of development been out our way. But I'm going to concentrate on the Blanchard Road extension development where Peaceful Way is. And I'm going to talk a little bit beyond Peaceful Way, how it relates to some things there. First of all, I dug through first of all, I have a question that came up from the talk from you folks. Is there money involved in this if we accept the road? Is there money involved, or we just accept the road?
I don't understand your question. When you say money,
Do we have to pay something for the road?
No.
Or do we just accept? Okay, I heard the word payment come up, so that, I didn't think so, but when I
Just to
heard payment,
Just to clarify for everybody at home, it's whatever the annual cost is for plowing. Anytime a road is, there's an incurred capital cost, like an
that's what you were
incurred
talking
cost.
about,
Yeah.
payment.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wanted to be certain I understood. So I've gone through the comprehensive plan. The most recent one I could find is 2014, is that correct? That's correct. So it's got some things on here, as walkers, we have a lot of walkers and bike people out in West Cumberland that used to go up and down Blanchard Road Extension without fear. Now we go up and down Blanchard Road Extension with a lot of fear. I had a delivery truck, I think it's Penske, it's a yellow one. I think he was driving 60, I was walking out there, driving 60, headed out. Obviously didn't know it was a dead end kind of thing, delivering something. So anyway, it's become a much more dangerous area. And tied in with that, in the, I gotta look at it, comprehensive plan, on page 9, it reads, requiring sidewalks in all subdivisions with pedestrian and bicycle connections between neighborhoods and an interconnected street network. There is no sidewalk or bicycle in that Peaceful Way, nor Stonewall. I don't think Cortland's got it either, but I'm not, either Cortland or Fuller doesn't have sidewalk. Another page, on page 46, specific goals are to provide safe roads in good condition. I think that's the case here. The road at Peaceful Way is is very good. Although on both of those, the cul-de-sac at the end is a very big circle that I don't know if we plow that whole circle or treat it like a round thing. There's a lot of plowing at the end of both of those roads, it appears to me, a lot of cost. And also that specific goals are to strive for safe roads for bicycles and pedestrians. That is missing in the Blanchard Road Extension developments. And Blanchard Road Extension in particular is in very bad shape. There's no shoulder to speak of, no place to walk, no place to bike for either me, an adult, or children. The point I would make about that is I've got some other pages to read here. Just going to look at them quick to see if there's something else that makes me regularly review speed limits in areas with high pedestrian bike use to ensure road that they are safe. Blanchard Road Extension is a dead end, turns into dirt, and I'm not sure the cops go out there or not. I could tell you, when I was at the meeting on the Tuttle Road thing, somebody from the Tuttle Road, Middle Road area said that they don't see the cops down there enforcing speed limits. I can tell you that if you ask 90% of the West Cumberland people, they'd say they don't see the cops either. So first thing that jokingly went through my mind when that person said, I'm like, so where are the cops? Because we're not seeing them either end of town. But that's true. We don't see the cops much out there. And especially, I don't think, on Blanchard Road Extension. Conduct neighborhood meetings to determine the desire for sidewalks in certain neighborhoods. There's a lot of talk about sidewalks in the comprehensive plan, and bike roads. Ensure the paved shoulders are maintained in good condition and are wide enough for bicycles. That's probably the case on Peaceful Way, but it's definitely not on either Blanchard Road Extension, and I'm including Blanchard Road Extension to be from Skillen Blanchard intersection all the way up through. It's very narrow, very dangerous, walking and biking. I can tell you, personal experience, I do it. And privately owned roads are typically small subdivision roads, which this one is, and it talks about the expense of providing snow removal and to maintain these roads is considerable. A different concept has been put in place to address this concern. The town will consider being given a public easement which allows but does not require the town to provide maintenance services. This is just my exploring the comprehensive plan. So I think there's a lesson to be learned in this topic. First of all, Peaceful Way does not have a sidewalk. I don't know if that's a requirement or not. Based on what I hear now, I'm probably going to be told that that's a planning board decision.
It is.
Yeah, so that brings up the first topic that I was going to say, and then I forgot, is that there's a lot of confusion for us taxpayers and residents about who's responsible for what and who do you talk to about what, the planning board or the town council. I always thought that the town council is where the buck stops, but it doesn't. You guys, you blame the planning board for things, and then we don't. The planning board is much. You folks don't do a real good job about getting the agenda out to us either, but I don't know if the planning board puts agendas out or not. I can't tell you if they do.
They do.
Where are they, in the forecaster? Am I missing them?
They're mailed within, every abutter within 500 feet gets notice for every planning board meeting. So if there's
Okay.
an item going near your house, you
Yeah.
will get a notice anywhere within 500 feet of a
Yeah.
project.
So a general taxpayer like me that would be interested in what's going on down on the Forsyth, because it might affect me as a taxpayer.
The planning board agenda is posted every week on the town crier, just like the town council's agenda is posted every week on the town crier. So if you have any questions about whether there's any notification, it
Okay.
is posted every time on the town crier.
I've had occasions, one occasion recently, where the town council agenda was referred to in the town crier, and it was not there. Just seems you brought up that topic. Mr. Shane knows that. I brought it up to him. It was put, the town,
We're still working on perfection.
Yeah, and Mr. Sherwin, if you had any other comments about the
Yeah.
actual Peaceful
okay,
Way.
okay, there's a
acceptance.
lesson to be learned from this Blanchard Road Extension developments around it, including Peaceful Way. we need to, and again, I'm not an expert on these things. I know 1% of what I might think I know about this stuff. But I think when we have these developers, and the town is growing so much, and I know other towns do these things, I believe they do, we need to be talking more to the developers about how they affect the whole area and how we might hit them to pay some of the costs of improving Blanchard Road extension. Because now there's gonna be a lot more walkers and a lot more bicycles there. And I don't know if that's a planning board issue or a town council issue, but all I know is I'm pretty nervous walking out there now.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. Any other comments from the council? Seeing none, I would accept a motion in one direction or another.
I'll give you one.
Thank you.
I move to accept Peaceful Way as a town road, inclusive of all deeds and agreements included in the meeting materials.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any other comments? Counselor
I'm
Sorkin?
just going to repeat, I'm
Yeah.
going to vote against this because I don't know if any of the residents want it even to be a public road. We have a request from a developer who lives in Kentucky who wants this to be made into a public road, or who is from Kentucky, is that correct? And I haven't heard from any of the citizens on the road that they want this to be a public way.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay. All those opposed? 4-3. Thanks, everyone, for a great discussion on that. And Mr. Manager, I do think that it's probably a good idea to start setting up some time to talk with the planning board and coordinating more with the council to make sure that future developments talk about that hammerhead ending to streets, so this issu's
It's an
somewhat
easy
resolved.
one to fix, and I think that's a good point. We can do that, and then we'd always have an option, regardless if the next land got developed 20 years later, the right-of-way would be right to that property line, and I think that was a great part of the discussion, Ron. I appreciate that.
I agree.
Thank you.
Sounds like a shark, too.
I think it's,
Don't call me Hammerhead Cop.
oh, man.
Oh, wow.
You just gave me a lot of material to work with. Yeah.
Analogies I've heard this evening are
Oh,
just
worse.
brutal.
Okay, moving on. Let's see, item 23-124, to authorize the town manager to accept payment for delinquent taxes in the amount of $2,299.17 on property identified as tax map R07, lot 69. It's my understanding this is very similar to other instances where we've accepted delinquent property taxes in the past. Citizens obviously wanting to gather the funds needed to pay outstanding property taxes, and so it's something I think as a policy the council has always really strongly encouraged. I believe, looking at the packet, this was to pay off fully fiscal year 21's property taxes.
Right.
And that there would be a balance of $3,578 remaining on this account, if you can call it that.
Yeah, it's probably more than that, because we're in FY '24 now, so they are chipping away at it, and we are working with the family to get this done. I think continuing to allow it to apply what money they can put toward the oldest rates knocks another year off the lien process, so
Yep.
they're catching up. A lot
Yeah, and
quicker
so
than
just a
thought.
quick correction here. So the payment of $2,299.17, this payment will effectively pay off fiscal year's 21 foreclosed lien balance of $1,228.87. And then the remaining $1,070.30 would be applied towards fiscal year's 22 foreclosed tax lien, leaving that balance of about $3,500 that we talked about. Any questions from the council on this? I think this is something that's been encouraged and I think welcomed by the council in the past, and so I think that's a great policy. Seeing no questions or comments, Councilor Kopp?
I'll give you a motion, and I want to commend this gentleman because he has been working very hard to pay these off. I mean, it's a family member, and he's been struggling, and he's been doing a good job, and I commend him for what he's doing, and I'll give you a motion. I move to authorize the town manager to accept payment for delinquent taxes in the amount of $2,299.17 on property identified as tax map R07, lot 69.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, that concludes legislation and policy. Now moving to new business. Maybe I will start at my left, Counselor Cop.
I'd like to donate my $20 to the food pantry. And Bill, you mentioned the baskets that you give out. What is the cost of the baskets?
Oh, gosh,
Ballpark, I mean, I'm
probably
just,
one, somewhere around $150,
for one basket.
Yep.
And how many do you give out?
85.
I mean, I just think the people in the public need to know that. I mean, I think that, I mean, you do this every year. My wife has actually come, Jeff has asked my wife to come down and help out.
Awesome.
And she says, oh my God, she says, I'm gonna be there from noon till 6. But it is so worthy. I mean, I've stepped in a couple of times at this time of the year, and it's a very worthy cause. I mean, so I appreciate what you do and what everybody does for the food pantry, because
Every little bit helps, even the can of peas or the cranberry sauce, or if you go online, you'll see what you can get. It doesn't matter what it is. It's so many people giving and so many people coming through the doors Thursday afternoon to help
I'm
participate.
gonna buy a basket, so there's another $150.
Oh, Ron.
That's all I have.
I commit to a basket.
You didn't have to do that.
Yes, I did.
Great, thank you, Counselor
That's
Bell.
all I got.
Counselor Fizzle.
Yep. We had a really great walkthrough of the the town forest with the town forester, Paul Larrabee, who is amazing, as well as Gordon, thank you, and Sally Stockwell, who was all up at 7:30 a.m. Really, really eye-opening to see a lot of the grinding and spraying that was done and how a lot of the, well, take your pick. Is it the Phragmites? Is it the bittersweet? Is it the buckthorn? They're just these persistent, wonky species, but I really commend all of the work that's been put into that. On that topic, on November 16th, the Lands and Conservation Commission, in conjunction with the Maine Coast Heritage Trust, are going to be doing a presentation on invasive species at Valhalla at 6:30 p.m. So I'd really encourage folks to get out for that. And that's it from me.
Great, thank you. Counselor Douglas.
Nothing new on my end.
Counselor Eads.
Just one real quick thing. I want to thank brothers Chris and Skip Yale. Chris lives right here in town. They harvested a moose a few weeks ago, and we had our meeting earlier. They brought in another 40 or 50 pounds of hamburgers, so to go towards the food pantry. So thank you, Skip and Chris. That's it.
We found out earlier tonight that former counselor Tom Gruber has a fall and has not been feeling well, and I want to get well wishes from all of us here, Tom. I hope the message gets passed along that we're thinking of you. I also wanted to let the public know that there is a taxpayer advisory group that's been in touch with me. I've been in active communication with them, and they are taking their concerns public. So they are hosting a meeting at the North Yarmouth Community Center on Saturday from 2 to 4. It's kind of an open house. They're interested in working with North Yarmouth and the school board and the town of Cumberland on property tax issues and decisions coming down the road that might be affecting property taxes, trying to look at it from a I don't know, build your 40,000-foot site to see, where is our planning going, where is our focus. from what I can tell you, it's a very diverse group of people, and they're concerned about not all information getting shared via Facebook, because that isn't always positive. This is actually a group that intends to work positively and proactively and transparently. And so they're looking for the public to come and share their concerns and thoughts on property taxes again Saturday from 2 to 4 at the community center in North Yarmouth. And I told them I would share that here with this group tonight. And I think I make notes. And that's, I guess, all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I might pass it back to you. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit. I was going to congratulate the Greeley football team for such a wonderful season, and I might pass that to you, just given
Well,
the
I
connection
couldn't
there.
be prouder. Not only is my son the head coach, but several of my students were key players on the team this year, and it was so fun to say, go Braden or go Ryder, and they're both seniors this year, and I'm so proud of their accomplishments as seniors. I was able to tell Ryder after the game that I was so proud of him, just the way they just went at it with a purpose. And I think the future looks strong. What many people don't know, they see the loss, but they don't realize that our quarterback got taken out in the first quarter and got replaced by a freshman quarterback who I think has an amazing arm. For a freshman, and I learned from Caleb, he's just turned 15. He's not an old freshman. He's not one of those red-shirted kindergartners, Yeah, so thank you for that. I think that the entire town is very proud of and not just that, at Greeley High School, we have a lot of student athletes. Many students at Greeley participate in athletics, from cross-country to, field hockey, my passion, soccer, volleyball, fall sports. I think they're all in their week off. They have to have a week off before winter starts, but some are already thinking winter sports, so good luck this winter.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Two things, Mr. Manager, I'll actually pass this to you.
Okay, just to let the public know, on November 21st, we're going to be having a neighborhood meeting here in the council chambers to meet with some residents from Spruce Lane regarding basically our town ordinances and building codes and, essentially continuous construction projects that happen over a long duration, a period of time, and, how can we help this neighborhood and other neighborhoods in the future deal with that. And to date, there hasn't been really positive resolution from staff because we enforce the ordinances, and if the ordinances say this is allowed or that is allowed or is silent, it's very difficult to enforce something that we don't have code behind. So hopefully we'll have a good discussion and we can hear some ideas and discuss further. I think this kind of comes in cycles. We've had this before. This usually results in some discussion around nuisance ordinances, and our attorneys get involved and talk about the enforceability of those, and I think that would be helpful for the council as well to hear in the future. The second item is also the DOT has a meeting notice out kind of to discuss the bridge replacement on Tuttle Road, and that is, public comment now is available between November 8th and November 26th. So that is this month. Please, if you are in the area or use that road for anything, it's posted now because of the accident that happened that damaged the bridge, so it's very difficult for us. We're still trying to get an exemption for our fire trucks to go over the bridge, so that's still a work in progress, but it's important that we participate and see where it goes. I have requested a sidewalk. No other town has paid for a sidewalk around us. They're telling us it's $700,000. I said, no problem, you should pay for it since you paid for Yarmouth and you paid for Freeports and you paid for Falmouth. So I don't know how they charge us that kind of money for a sidewalk over a bridge, but it's going to be the last time that bridge is going to be worked on for 50 to 70 years. So please don't keep your eye on the prize with that one, and make sure we have that on there so if future connectivity is there, because that little eight-inch curb that's there now isn't very safe. So that's all I have, sir.
Great, thank you very much. And just to end the meeting this evening, Mr. Manager, you remind us that it's coming up quickly, but next week is Thanksgiving, so I'd like to wish everyone in town a wonderful, happy and safe Thanksgiving. Watching the news or hearing the news as to what's going on all around the world, I feel very fortunate and blessed to be living in Cumberland, and I think we're all have a lot to be thankful for. So with that, I will accept a motion to
I think
adjourn.
Mark, too, just our thoughts and prayers of the people of Lewiston.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, thank you, Mike. Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, thank you very much.
Hammerhead?
Mike, thank you.